evolution, not revolution. A lot of people now, employees, etc., want revolution. That's it. I'm not going back to the office ever. Really, even a new job.
Are we in this space that we've just got, let's not say evil bosses, but we've got, like bosses that look like us, waiting away, the recession's coming, and I'll be able to get them all back in and treat them like the good old days when I could just tell them what to do and they daren't question me. That still feels like the leaderships have got to go on a path. So today I'm joined on Mental by a genuine human being. Julio Bruno was the CEO at Time Out who took the company public in 2016. He led its transformation from a magazine to a digital platform in no less than 58 countries. He's also spearheaded the global expansion of the Time Out Market Food Oil division, and in 2021 was awarded the Business Leader of the Year in Consumer Media. Spaniard by birth, American by choice, and British by residence, Julio previously held positions at TripAdvisor, Travelport, Regis, Energizer, and Diageo. And these days he's working with the startup community as an investor and a board director. But now he's also adding author to the list of accolades with a passion to lead, advice for inspirational leaders, billed as an incisive look at the journey of an outsider to becoming a global CEO, packed full of personal lessons and advice for ambitious leaders in a post-COVID world. Julio, it's brilliant to see you again. It sounds like you've been busy.
I think so, yes. Yeah, I wanted to be on holiday and do something exotic, but I have not been able to. Although I did escape a few days to Asturias in Spain and then to Greece, to Mykonos. So, yeah, a little bit.
Very jealous as my passport's caught up in the UK passport farrago. But anyway, enough about me. The book, some amazing chapters I've seen. I know it comes out in a few weeks' time. But before we actually get into the content, why now? Because, talk us through your transition. You were the CEO of Time Out globally for a long time. Big, you did massive achievements there. What was it about now that you wanted to sit down and write a book about leadership?
Well, you said it. The word was long time. I was 6.5 years, or almost 6.5 years at Time Out, a company that I took public, a publicly listed company. And as you can imagine, and if you look around, CEOs of publicly listed companies don't last, much more than 5 years, etc., because it's a lot of work. Yeah. It was absolutely enjoyable. It was great. But after, or almost after COVID, which at the end of last year, it was the time for me to move on. Yeah. And leave other people do and continue. I think I had done what I set out to achieve, considering the circumstances of what happened, COVID, being called time out when everybody's in and, into timing and all that. So I think that I had worked with an incredible group of people, friends, a good board, and it was time for me to move on and try something else. I didn't want to repeat the story, again, if you want. Yeah. And that's I'm happy that I did. And now, as you said, I'm quite busy actually. And that was the time for me. There was the Omicron variants here, and we had another lockdown. And I said, I started to write. I wanted to put down in writing some of my experiences, some of the things that I have learned, some of the ones that I'm still learning. And I started writing, and then I found a publisher, and the rest is history. And by the way, here it is.
Amazing. Congratulations. Where did the idea come from then? I mean, look, you've exited Time Out. You've got some time out on your hands. You've got some time in on your hands even as well. But where was that spark of like, yes, I'm going to write a book and this is what I want to say? Had it been building up for some time, or, was it a passing conversation with a friend? What was the inspiration for it?
I think a combination. I've been writing articles for a while in the UK, in Spain, in the USA. And the more I wrote, and then I took a course at university. Then I went to Oxford and did a writing fiction course as well. And I kept writing some fiction, and at the same time, some analysis, and I had my podcast at Time Out. Then I started my own podcast called The Internationalist.
Yeah.
And it just became natural. I think that Time Out, also working with so many talented journalists, piqued my interest in trying to also use my voice. And more I realized that, the more I was writing and the more I was, giving interviews or interviewing people in my podcast, I wanted to participate. And I guess, people say that, you have to plant a tree and write a book. So I already planted a tree, and more than one. So why not? It was the right time. You take a stock, you stop. It was a time of, we were coming, well, Omicron was there, but, it has been a year and a half of COVID, and the world changed. And as I talk about in the book, and sorry to refer to my own book now,
Of
but
course.
I talk about that is the Great Reassessment. When people call the Great Resignation, I call it, and not just me, I call it the Great Reassessment. And I am part of that.
Yeah.
When you stop and think about what do you want to do in life, are you doing what you want to do and what you can do? Is there any other thing that you want to do? And I think that reassessment of your life and where you are, it's also, what happened to me, like a lot of other people around the world.
Well, it certainly gels with me, having recently started up mentl to try and add some value to the world in terms of the conversation around mental health. Really interesting you write this book now, though, because one of the things we talk about at mentl a lot is well-being and mental health in the workplace, because obviously all of us spend so much time often in the workplace. And leadership, plays such an important role in that, both in terms of the culture that's created inside organizations, but also, and I know you actually write about it in the book, it's tough at the top. And there's so much research out there that shows that leaders are not really paying enough attention to their own mental health. And then there's a spiral down. We've got insecure leaders who are burnt out, that are not aware of their own mental health. And it feels like leadership is it's actually crossed an inflection point. And actually, if we want to, if leaders want to be ambitious, and as you say in the title, inspirational, there's another great reassessment of what it needs, what it means to be a leader. So I wanted to get your thoughts about that, where you think just leadership is right now in a post-COVID world with everything that's going on.
Wow, that's such a large, deep question. But leadership, I think, took a tumble during COVID. We didn't know as a species how to deal with something like that, even though we have had scares before, but nothing so fast all over the world at the same time and so deadly like COVID. And suddenly countries and leaders of country, politicians, didn't really know what to do. And there were this kind of tribalism that we live in. There was, and I don't need to give names here, but everybody knows the culprits. When COVID was used for political gain, and suddenly, you have one saying this, and there is no science base, and the others are this. And the people were left in the middle because there was no leadership. The leadership was much more about, as I said, political gain and accusing the other side of something, when the reality is that, we got a virus that could have been an accident, it happened, whatever it was, but we needed to resolve it, and fast. And the bodies were piling up around the world. But leaders, in general, not everybody, but leaders were not leading. So leadership, to me, and maybe part of the title of the book was about that at that moment, because in this great reassessment that I mentioned also is, hold on, is this the world that we are living now?
Yeah.
Where almost each one out there for themselves. I remember talking to other leaders of companies that, in a way, if I may include myself, we had to become leaders of ideas, because the people were looking for answers. What happened to my job during COVID? Am I going to have another job to come? Are we closing down? What is happening to the world? Am I going to die? And people didn't know. There was so much uncertainty. I'm going to stay home forever. I mean, it's weeks and weeks and weeks. And leaders couldn't say anything, or if they were saying something, it was completely used and misusing information, disinformation, and the people were left alone almost to do whatever. And there were families separating through WhatsApp because I'm not going to use a mask, or I'm using a mask, I'm not going to get vaccinated. There was incredible stupidity still today in the world, and a lack of leadership that it was phenomenal. I mean, we had it everywhere. I don't want to single out countries because they are, I think everybody could just pinpoint something that happened. Some country did it this way, the other not. Then one took 3 weeks later or a month later. It was crazy. And I know this was new. There should have been contingency plans. We should know how to deal with a plague like this one, because we have had others, but we didn't. And leaders, well, we couldn't find them. So to a degree, people start leading, their home, maybe their office, maybe their company, and try to find answers for the people in their sphere of influence. And and leadership today continues to be lacking around the world, and obviously with wonderful exceptions. But
I'm going to put my hand up and say we were incredibly spoiled here in the UAE, because obviously I think its response to the pandemic was absolutely fantastic. And I know you visited Dubai to open up the timeout market in the middle of that, and you saw the rewards of that. But in terms of leadership around the world inside companies, I'm really interested to know, because obviously you are a successful leader, but how you've changed, because there's a really interesting title of a chapter in your book, which is Chief Servant Officer. And at Mentl, we've been talking about this evolution of the kind of definition of CEO, which used to be Chief Executive Officer, only focused on the P&L. The human beings were, however you got there, you got there. So now this Chief Empathy Officer, to now even evolving into this space around this conversation where leadership is more like sports coaching, where it's your job is to get, to empower your people so they can achieve, because essentially they're the players on the field of, on the field of play. They need to score the goals. So I really wanted to get your perspective on where we are in terms of corporate leadership, and what you are going to be unpacking in the section entitled Chief Servant Officer.
Well, I don't think that leadership has changed in its essence. I think that today we are trying to find new names, sometimes because it's cool to be called Chief Empathy Officer or Chief whatever Dream Officer or Chief whatever. There is a lot of new age kind of, oh, well, look at my title. I don't want to call myself CEO. Yeah. At the end, the Chief Executive Officer is the leader of a company, although the leadership today is a shared leadership. That's where you have what is called the C-suite. You have your Chief Marketing Officer, your Chief Financial Officer, the other people, whatever titles that are, if you want, the leadership of the company. So that's first, it has to be shared. And I think that maybe, I don't know, dozens of years ago, leadership was much more hierarchical, and you have the boss, and the boss says that, and everybody else then went there and did it. It doesn't work like that anymore. You have a stakeholders, which includes obviously your employees, and everybody else around, shareholders, board, etc., etc. But in a sense, it's the same. You are influencing, empowering, influencing, and giving the tools to people to achieve the results that the company has set out to achieve. At the end, a company is a business, and it has to make money. We're in a capitalist, world in which, you create this to make money, and that continues to be. So, okay, there are charity organizations, and that's different, but business in the main have to make money, have to have a P&L, as you said, and somebody has to look at it, right? Now, the question is how you look at it. Maybe in the past, and I'll say maybe, companies were only looking at the bottom line and not at the people. Yeah. And leadership has evolved now to look at the people as well as everything else. Because today, employees, all of us, are looking for purpose, are looking for a reason to do what we do. More and more younger generations, the millennials and the so-called Zoomers or Gen Z, are looking at companies that are giving them a purpose in what they do, or they say, well, I see that this company is trying to achieve this, and this is how I fit in this framework, and I can see that what I'm contributing to the company every day in whichever job, right? And I think that is more pervasive today than it was years ago. So a leader who leads with his back to the employees will get nowhere. In today's world, forget it. People have a choice. They will look for something else, for another company, for a place where they can feel that they can be themselves, for instance. And what in the book I referred to chief servant officer, this was an interview I gave to the BBC years ago, and I think it's somewhere online. And I said it was a reflection. It was, maybe a little bit show-offy of a CEO to think out loud, oh, what did you mean you are the chief servant officer? I can tell you that my PR department didn't like me saying that. And what I was trying to convey at the time was that, when you go out as a leader of a department, a leader of a function, and you grow, you may think, at least people of my generation, Gen X, that when you get to the top, there you are, you are the one making decisions. The reality, when you get to the top, you are not making decisions in the way that you thought you were going to make decisions. You have to be there serving the company and the purpose of the company and the stakeholders of the company, whether it's the board, the investors, the employees, and everybody else. So you are in a service, you are service. You are a service for the company. And that's what I get servant. Obviously, the servant and master had other connotations. I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it as being a servant, but to be of service. That means that you drop everything and work somebody's problem. Yes. You have to listen to your team when they come to you with something. If you don't, then you're not a leader. You're not going to be respected. People expect their attention. They expect you to, drop what you're working on and listen to them. And that realization, when I gave that interview, was what prompted me to talk about chief servant officer, and that's why I talk about that in the book, not about the interview, but about what I mean by that. The perception or the expectation that when you get to be a leader is like kind of the old style. We say ordeno y mando.
Command and control, do as you're told. I know everything.
Exactly. And that is gone.
Well, not everywhere, but
in most companies, I was going to say not everywhere. But I think that in companies that have to be, that are aspiring to be important companies, and I would imagine that most of the companies that today we admire, they have that sort of shared leadership, this kind of, I wouldn't say servilism, but this service, they're trying to serve the people that you work with in, achieving a common goal. And again, I'm not saying here kumbaya. You still are the CEO. No. You still have to go there and say, hey, my friend, if you don't give results, this company is going to get in trouble. If you don't solve this, you're going to have another problem. If you don't grow in this way, you are not going to have the employees that you need, or your business is not going to grow. That still has to happen. Now you have to wear all the other hats as well.
No, it's interesting because you touched upon so many different things there. I'll start with you talking about the Gen Zs. As unlike you, I'm a Gen X. I'm not a boomer, despite what my boy keeps calling me. I've seen research recently. I think it was McKinsey that was saying that actually the Gen Zs are going to be the first generation that actually puts purpose before salary. And those kind of days are dwindling, if they're not gone, but they're dwindling, in that we think that it's just this kind of pact between, right, we pay you a salary, just do as you're told. And I know I've listened to a guy called Gary V, who talks about the great, forget the Great Resignation, maybe because your definition of the Great Assessment is a bit wider, where he's saying we're never going to come and work for your company in the first place. And actually there's a real existential crisis or threat for companies if they can't bring in the Gen Zs and the millennials and attract them, because every company needs to evolve, be agile, ride waves of disruption, and innovate. And if we're not bringing the kids along with us, what future have companies got?
That is true, but also let's be clear.
Mm.
People need to work and they have to find a job.
Yeah.
And if works were infinite and you could choose all those incredible companies and the amount of available jobs were infinite, that would be true. But the reality is not. And now probably millennials, not probably, certainly millennials or some millennials and certainly non-Gen Z, they have not had a recession. So they have used to live in a world where a lot of work is available, at least in the Western world I'm talking about now.
Yeah.
You know, you have UK with a 3.5% unemployment that's similar to the USA and other places. Kind of you feel, I can go wherever I want, and I can leave my job in 6 months and then take 3 months sabbatical and then go back to another thing. At some point that's stopping because recessions come and go, and we have been living for too long without a recession. And that's unusual historically.
Yeah.
So that is important that we remember that if there is a lot of work out there, then, you know, as an employee, you can decide almost, provided that you have the education, you have the experience, et cetera, et cetera. But when the thing turns, companies become like, hold on. It's like a lot of companies now, even in the tech companies, that are saying, you know, COVID is not gone, but we passed it now, and we have the vaccine. We can deal with it, so you have to come to work. And people say, no, I'm not coming back to work. I'm staying home because that's what I want. And you said, hold on, but we hired you here, you know, I don't know, in London 2 years ago, and now you're living in Portugal with a London salary, and you don't want to come to the office. And good for you, maybe, but maybe no, because I want that creativity. I want to be people here exchanging ideas face to face. The new people don't know what is the culture of a company, because, you know, in a two-dimensional Zoom world, you cannot see how can learn from other people, etc. So I want you to come here. And then you start, well, I'm going to negotiate. I'm going to be 3 days in the office or 2 days in the office. And it's almost like it's funny odd to see how that is happening. And I can see how companies are saying, no, hold on, look at my productivity, etc. And then we have, on top of that, what I like to call the blue collar and white collar divide. That's very good if you have a white collar information-based job that you can do from anywhere with a computer. But how about all these other people who are driving the bus and are serving your food, and they are going to your hospital, and all these people don't have a choice. So what are we creating here? Another two-tier society? And that's also very important as well from the point of view of we as human beings. And then even if you want to be more prosaic, even taxes. If the center of cities, no longer, people don't go there anymore, what happened with all those businesses and everything that makes up a city? We don't have yet a solution not to have a completely decentralized city where you don't have, you know, a Starbucks in every corner because nobody will go there. So there is a lot of things that we haven't resolved yet. And it cannot just be resolved by saying, okay, we had COVID, the world has changed, that's it. No, we have to, the rest haven't caught up yet with that. So I think there is a little an element there that we are, you know, talking about Gen Z and millennials, that maybe they don't have all the experience yet to see that the world is not exactly what it is now just because COVID happened.
So, I mean, it was interesting because I listened to a podcast with a guy called Malcolm Gladwell, who's this noted journalist in the US, and he actually got quite a bit of furore about his comments, which was, he was saying, yes, we are as human beings are very social creatures. And he didn't think that remote working was good for, cultures. And it was a huge backlash because, and look, I'm my personal circumstances, I love remote working. And I am one of those people that you talk about where I am spoiled that, particularly as a creative, I can sit and I can create and I don't necessarily need to be in an office. But what he was saying was that actually, he didn't think that companies were making a good enough case to bring employees back and make the office an attractive place to be again. And we've got so many different things. We've got quiet quitting out there. But at the flip side, I know that my experience is not the experience of a 20-year-old who's coming into a company, who needs to learn company culture, who wants to almost get that mentoring by osmosis by sitting next to people who are who are more experienced, and just listening and seeing the way they do things. So my question, it's almost like, do we want things to go back to the way they were, or what is the way forward? And you mentioned obviously purpose before, which seems to be really important. And then there's the old phrase, which is culture eats strategy for breakfast every morning. Is culture, whether you are remote, hybrid, or public facing all the time, is culture the answer? Do we have to get that right so people feel empowered in their space? Again, removing that kind of attitude that the leadership has their backs to its people.
Well, first, Gladwell is a great mind that I admire. And I'm gonna now look for those comments because I want to listen to them. But I see where he's coming from, because it's almost like we have decided, the employees have decided how the world now has to go. That's it. This happened, and from now on, this is who I am. I'm a freelance in a way, and I'm gonna do that. And I said, okay, fine, then be a freelance and work from home, and then you lease out your time and your knowledge to companies. But what you're saying is, no. I want the companies to now do what I want, because suddenly I like to be home. Not everybody like to be home or have a home to go to and work every day. So I think that there is that. It's not a black and white, like everything. Yeah. And what I put also in my book is about what does it mean about the future of hybrid working, and what does hybrid working mean? And I know hybrid is a compromise, and hybrid is a compromise because we already had before COVID this flexi work, people sharing a job, companies that on Friday afternoons, they are free if you work another hour during the week. There were already things happening in many companies.
Which used to be a differentiator.
Yeah, to differentiate, to be a perk, etc. So what we are doing is that accelerated, the typical that COVID accelerated 20 years, the way we work, by accident. Obviously, we could have done without COVID, let's be clear. Yeah. But by accident, we got that in these are the results. And at this moment, the pendulum moved completely the other way. If you want me, you have to, if you don't put flexible remote working in I'm not going to even apply, fine. Until you have to pay your mortgage, or if you have your mortgage, your lease, or your co-working space in Costa Rica, right? Because why would, as a company, pay you a salary of London or New York if you are based in Costa Rica or in Portugal? To give an example. Yeah. And that's also, companies are reacting to that. And I said, I'm not going to be paying New York salaries or San Francisco salaries to people who are living, I don't know, in Central America or in Mexico or whatever. Because, well, look what is happening in America with all these expats, to call it something, who went to Mexico, live in Mexico, much better with the salary of the USA. And now the Mexicans saying, hold on, it's terrible because you are taking all the apartments in the best parts of town, in Mexico City or whatever, and I don't want you here for that because you are changing, you have a different socioeconomic reality than ours. And obviously now the governments have to react to that, because if not, it's quite problematic. No, they are buying up all the real estate, etc., and everything becomes more expensive. So there is a lot of movements there that are happening that we are just now realizing, like the example I gave you about Mexico, which is something that is happening now. So I think that the reality of hybrid work, to call it something, is here to stay, but we haven't yet done or have a very good model of what it should be. For now, we are saying the 3 days in the office, 2 days, and the 2 days at home happen to be Monday and Friday. That's come on, that's a 4-day weekend. And let's be clear, there is a little of cynicism from the employees, from all of us in general, to I work from home, I can work more hours because I don't need to commute. And I'll send you an email at 9 p.m. at night. Let me be cynical about it for a bit. It's much more comfortable for a lot of people, but not everybody, if you have a good home, that you have a space to work, than going to an office. But it's not good for a lot of people. It's not good. And also, socially, how do you meet people? If you're staying home all day long, you're going to be in Tinder all day long?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally get that. And that's why I say also, I remember lockdown, which was the remote working experience for many people, and I got 6-year-old daughter. So as a parent, it was great because I got to go downstairs and be present with her, rather than normally being at the water cooler and having a chit chat about whatever with a work colleague. But if I was a 25-year-old new trainee who would come to a company, I mean, often that is their, that is their social scene. So all of a sudden that's taken away. I'm interested because you say like it's here to stay. I wanted to get like where you really feel it, because it feels like we're just still in this massive period of disruption. We can't go back because we're just not going to be able to put it back in the box. And there are leaderships out there that still want to go back, just go back. No, we want it to be the way it was. But the path forward is also quite complicated, and often, it requires. Does it require the world of management to change and evolve? And I think you talk about evolution rather than revolution, and what you think the path forward is, because on one side, if we're talking about being cynical about, well, staff are actually getting the Monday and Friday, that's kind of, isn't that more of a hiring issue rather than a management issue in a way, that we've got to get people that are on board with our culture and our purpose and our vision? And if we take it back to purpose, and we're inculcating purpose into our organizations and bringing people with us, does that help us move forward? I'm interested, because I think
yeah, I mean, evolution, not revolution. A lot of people now, employees, etc., want revolution. That's it. I'm not going back to the office ever. Really, even a new job, you're not even curious to see how it is, how are the people, what does it make a job. I know that a company is not made by the physicality of where it is based, clearly not in the digital age. However, it has part of the culture and the purpose. And a culture that is only based in Zoom or any other of the Teams or whatever, or Google Hangouts, it could work for some companies, but not for all companies. And forget about the blue collar, white collar divide that I mentioned. I'm talking about in the information and knowledge economy. So it's not going to work for everybody. And so the revolution part, I don't think that is merited. That's what I'm saying. The evolution part, yes. You don't go back. I agree with that, because now we have tasted and tested that we can do a lot of things remotely, not all the time, but at other things that we cannot. And companies are trying to find solutions kind of in between, not only because, yes, there is a compromise, clearly, a compromise between the employer and the employee. That's always being, a negotiation. And maybe the pendulum seems to be much more now on the employee side. But again, until a recession hits, and then that moves again. And what we don't want is that pendulum swings back to a recession type, and then everybody has to go, yes, sir, back to the office 5 days a week.
I'm so glad you've gone there, because I was going to ask that, the evolution that leaderships need to go on as well. When we talk about revolution, we've got the evolution at the worker side, at the employee side, and then are we in this space there? We've just got, let's not say evil bosses, but we've got, like bosses that look like us, waiting away, the recession's coming, and I'll be able to get them all back in and treat them like the good old days when I could just tell them what to do and they daren't question me. That still feels like the leaderships have got to go on a path to go, look, that doesn't work. As you say, the leadership with the backs to its people are going to go nowhere.
Well, I hope there are not many leaders like that. I say, I cannot treat people like that. I hope not. I hope we have moved on, because clearly we know that happier people make for better companies. And more diverse companies make better companies. And all this is important for the evolution of, we are evolving as a species. Even when we have, peaks and troughs and all the other things in between, overall, we are evolving, right? The world moves with a lot of problems, but we move on. And I believe that there is something that leaders are learning, and then realize, as I said, they tasted themselves that actually, I also can work from home as a leader. So let's not be cynical. As a leader, there were moments that I enjoyed being at home for the first time in 25 years, doing that. And you can say, well, how do I then take the best of that, whatever the best means, and bring into the company? And not only, as many people are doing, as a recruitment tool, like saying, okay, this is a perk. Because if it's a perk, then it's like when Google 20 years ago, they were giving you, massage, or they were bringing your clothes at the office and all that, Silicon Valley. And that was a perk. But the perks then, when there is a recession or something, maybe they disappear because it costs a lot of money, right? So it has to be part of what the culture of that company is, and then the culture of work is. So yes, leaders need to evolve. And leaders, and I know many, they are desperate, asking for people to, okay, so what is the new paradigm of the office? What does it mean being in an office today? How can I do, what is best practice? And the best practice is still not established. And at most, we are following if Amazon, Meta, and Google do it, that must be right. Well, maybe that is right for them, for that kind of company, but not the best company. Clearly, I wouldn't follow some of them for anything. Others, yes. Okay, yes. But you know what I'm saying. So but that's what a lot of people are doing, and say, no, I'm going to wait for the big multinationals to make a decision, and I will follow. Because what we believe, we are human beings, is that, okay, if everybody's doing that, I can do the same, and at least I will have no negative differentiation in my company. So we are following the leaders. The problem is that it's not very clear who are the leaders, because then governments, with their own employees, are doing other things.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of civil servants that have not gone back to the office.
Yeah.
So if you see that the government's doing that, and again, I'm talking the Western world in general, because I have more information about this world, then you have the problem that the company wants to do that, but actually the government does that. That has to be defined. And then people do follow by example as well. Because if not, what we're going to do is exploit for profit those differences, right? Some people will get the best brains out there, and because they can exploit that difference, some people will lose out on the talent pool because of that. But there is also fear. Fear is what's moving companies today. Fear of missing out that talent, fear that I'm going to lose my workforce because I cannot give them what they want. How about fear of not having a culture and no loyalty? Because once I'm in a two-dimensional world of the screen, how am I loyal to what? To a brand name, to a logo? What am I loyal to? The people that I see them two-dimensional in my computer. I don't even know. I never met them. So there is a lot that you miss out, and companies then lose their soul. Yeah. Losing your soul as a company is terrible, because then you are just a commodity. And it doesn't matter you work for this company or this company or this company, because it's a commodity. Yeah. And one of the things that companies want is to differentiate themselves by their purpose, by what they are doing, what they are achieving or not achieving in whichever sector they are. So losing that soul, to me, is a big risk. So the compromise, I don't know, it will depend. I think also sectors, in the same way that depends on blue collar and white collar. We are not going back, but the way forward still is not very well defined.